Valuation of Facebook is 300 billion US dollar and market cap of Fortis is about 18 billion US dollar. Market cap of Ashok Layland is about 6 billion US dollar and market cap of Indigo is about 8 billion US dollar. So market cap of Facebook is more than Indigo, Ashok Layland and Fortis combined. If all the hospitals are closed by Fortis and all the planes are withdrawn by Indigo, and if all the trucks are gone by Ashok Layland, and on the other hand if Google is closed, which one would affect your life more? Hello everyone, I am Rupam, founder and CEO of Aculi Labs Private Limited, creator of Lifers, author of the book 0 to plus minus equal to an intimacy loss for man, the birth of the local. I am also inventor of PIO, Public Angel Investment Offer for private placement, a way of retail investor to invest in the frugal startup with only 10,000 rupees. Welcome you all to episode number 30 of 0 to plus minus equal to, an educational podcast series on early stage startups. And our today's episode is valuation versus value. So Facebook's valuation is about 300 billion US dollar. If Facebook is closed today as a company, how many of you would die? As a question, if Facebook is closed today, how many of you would die? Now, on the other hand, if, say for example, Indigo gets closed today and all the flights, domestic flights that Indigo plays, get stopped today, how many of your life is going to be affected? If all the hospitals are closed by Fortis, how many lives are going to be affected? What is the alternative of flight services? Train. How much of extra time it is going to take for you to travel from one end to another end? Let's say from Bangalore to Guwahati, it is going to take 3 days in train. So the impact of Indigo in the lives of Indians is massive. If Indigo gets closed, massive amount of Indians will be affected and there is no replacement. It is extremely hard to replace an airline service. So Indigo is much more valuable to the country than Facebook, because even if the Facebook gets closed, the number of lives affected would be very minimum. The same way, Fortis Hospital has a market cap of 18 billion US dollar. Now that is 15x lesser than Facebook. If Facebook doesn't function in India for a day, number of lives lost would be very less, none. Yeah, there will be some who spends their evening in Facebook. They would be little upset, but nobody is going to die. But imagine, Fortis gets closed, all its hospitals are closed, the cardiology department is closed and there is no emergency cardiac wards. How many people would die simply by heart attack? So, Fortis as a company is much more valuable to the country. India is a country which is a large country, and the entire functioning of the country to a great extent depends upon our delivery services. Trucks carry the product from one place to another place. Ashok Layland is one of the major truck players. Now imagine Ashok Layland gets closed and it withdraws all its trucks from Indian transport. All the Ashok Layland trucks are gone. What is going to be the effect on the Indian's life? The entire transport system of the country is going to be affected, and there would be a deficit, there would be a lack of even basic food grains. Food grains will not reach to the place, petrol will not reach to the places, so the effect is going to be devastating. So therefore valuation of a company does not ascertain the importance of the company to a nation or for people or for the society. The value of a company is never true reflection of valuation. Valuation is a promise. Any promise these days are fake promises. Promises are always fake promises because we have no restraint on what we promise to people. So it is very clear simply from the discussion that if Fortis gets closed, about 10,000 people are simply going to die. The cardiac patient to start with, who are being treated by Fortis every month, they are going to die because the rest of the country doesn't have that infrastructure. So Fortis's 1 month's operation saves 10,000 lives. Facebook doesn't do that, right? So value is not equal to valuation. Valuation is a promise. Anything which is promised gets broken in the economic slowdowns, and therefore high valuation companies are the one who gets crushed during the economic slowdown. Value, on the other hand, is often irreplaceable, and therefore it cannot always be converted into valuation, right? Because we cannot calculate the value of the life of people, 10,000 people that Fortis save. We cannot measure the exact value of getting our grain in time, the service that Ashok Layland trucks helps us to get. We cannot measure the value of being with the family during the festive season just because Indigo is flying the aeroplanes, right? It is very hard to measure these values because often value is extremely intangible. It is hard to measure the value. It is hard to measure the value of hunger. It is hard to value the cost, the quantity of human life. Is extremely hard to measure human emotions value. So these are something which are intangible and therefore they don't come under valuation. But all of these companies survive through the economic slowdown and other calamities simply because they are more valuable. And many high valuation companies collapse because they fail to create value. So what is the difference between the value and valuation? And as a startup, what is it that you should chase? Should you chase valuation or should you chase value? Well, of course, valuation sounds good to us. Back in early 2003-4, there was a company called Theranos that was valued $1 billion. Theranos promised that you can just prick a little blood and then you can measure all the renal profile, cardiac profile, lipid profile from just a drop of blood. You don't have to take out the venous blood. The problem is Scientifically speaking, the prick is taken from the capillary blood, which also have the oxygen. An unoxygenated blood cannot give a measurement of, let's say, lipid, because they remain in the oxygenated state. So scientifically, you cannot do that. You can estimate, but you cannot do that. Right? You can have an estimate of what could be the lipid levels, but you can measure the lipid profile with a prick of blood. So Theranos had a valuation of $1 billion. Elizabeth, the founder of Theranos, was promoted as being self-made billionaire, first self-made billionaire, female billionaire, and then the company crushed. Recently, one of the topmost Bitcoin exchanges, FTX, got crushed. It's a very high valuation company. FTX was real. It was just a crypto exchange. There was a lot of publicity about the founder, that he is being a very generous billionaire and he distributes his money, so and so. Come to understand, cryptocurrency tried to address one fundamental principle, which is that currency is a promise, and banks were inflating the promises. Currency is a debt bond, essentially. So I am just promising you that I am going to, you hold certain currency note. Back in 1947, $1 used to cost 1 rupees. Today, $1 cost 80 rupees. So nobody knows how the promises are made and based on what the promises are made. So cryptocurrency promised that it is going to take care of the flaws of the existing currency system. However, it was still a currency system. So any alternative to currency also comes with the same drawback that a currency comes. It's essentially a promise. There is a proverb, promises are meant to be broken. So irrespective of whatever kind of bond it is, if it is a debt bond, whether it is currency or cryptocurrency, that is always going to be volatile. Simple. Right. However, there are certain things which are real. You need water. It is real. There is no promise. You need water right now for drinking water. So your city's corporation has to arrange for the drinking water. Sewage is real. The corporation has to clean up your mess. It's very essential, because if you cannot have a sewage policy, then the entire city's population will be down. That's real. There is no promise over there. Your corporation cannot promise that it is going to clean the manhole. It has to do that. Alright? The governance cannot just promise you that we are going to give you water in the future. It has to give you the water. Electricity is real. Electricity companies are not promising you that they are going to give you electricity in the future. Electricity is real. You can touch that and you can feel the electricity. So anything which is real is valuable, and anything which is a promise has a high valuation, because promises are inflated. So when you chase false promises, you are essentially living in a fake world that I have a very high valuation. If your valuation is too high, then you are too less valuable. And if you are very valuable, your valuation will be less. This is a paradox. Let me repeat. A high valuation company will have a low value. A low valuation company will have a higher value. That's how the world goes. So, Indigo Airlines is much more valuable to the country than Facebook. Ashok Layland is much more valuable for the country and people than Facebook. Fortis is much more valuable for the country and people than Facebook. So if you have to invest your life What is it that you are supposed to invest into? Real things or promises? Because if you are living by promise, there will be a time after which such promises will be broken. Whether it is currency devaluation, whether it is cryptocurrency collapse, whether it is internet bubble burst or 2008 economic slowdown, because humans have no limit to promise, so debt has no limit. But reality has a limit. Electricity production has a limit. Water supply has a limit. You cannot supply infinite water. So when people talk about scalability, scalability is not real. Anything which is exponentially scalable is something which is not really real, which means that people don't really depend upon those things for their life, because anything where people have their life dependent, they're not scalable. Air is not scalable. You don't have infinite air, right? Water is not scalable. Sewage system is not scalable. There is a sewage company cannot take care of the sewage of 50 countries of the world. That's not scalable. It's a real thing. So whenever you look into the valuation of the companies, the market cap of the companies, the market cap of the companies may be anything. The valuation may be anything. FTX's valuation may be anything. Byjus is an Indian company that is valued $22 billion. How many of your children will die if Byjus closes down tomorrow? There is an alternative. Parents will teach the children, and parents will teach better. How many of you have alternative of Fortis? None. Let's say all the hospitals combined, their valuation is still less than Facebook. So if all the hospitals, major hospitals in India, Fortis, Medanta, Apollo Group, they decide that okay, let's close down, can you imagine the devastation it is going to cost to the country? So always first build a value. Once you have a value, then using that value, create something that also brings some valuation. But if you have to choose, your life has to start with creating value, not valuation. Once you make the value, because value is like the foundation, that's a close thing. Tata company creates a value in Indian's life. It is not only giving salary to its employees, but it provides infrastructure, road, housing, hospital, education. It's real value, right? Roads are real. Housing is real. A roof was a roof 50 years back also. A roof is a roof today also. A piece of cloth that you wear was a piece of cloth 50 years back also, and it is a cloth today also. Drinking water was a drinking water 50 years back also. They don't change. So values do not change. Valuation change. In 1947, Indian rupees was equivalent to $1. Today it is like 80 rupees you have to spend to get $1. Valuation changes, but the value doesn't. So as a company, you should always have to build the value first. Once you have created the value, you can always introduce a product that will drive a bit of valuation. If you run behind the valuation, that's fake. That's a promise. Even after you sell your company for $1 billion, and even if you have after sales $300 million, you are creating the business, closing down of which people's lives are not affected. Let's say if Amazon closed down, people's life are not going to be affected. Amazon as the mall. Alright. Then you are always vulnerable. As a company, you are vulnerable. Your services are vulnerable. Let's say you are building a product for the healthcare. If the healthcare is functioning without that product, your product is replaceable. It is not valuable. Create something which is so valuable that it is hard to replace. You have to, this as a startup, you have to think of this first to understand the value. And just before we end, now that you have understood the difference, that the value is something which remains stable, valuation is something which changes, value is something which is hard to replace, valuation is something which is easy to replace, value is something which affects real life, valuation doesn't affect real life. Value is something which can be physically felt. It is intangible. It cannot be measured, but it can be felt. On the other hand, valuation can be measured, but it cannot be felt. You cannot feel emotion with Byjus, right? You cannot feel any emotion, but you will feel emotion whenever you talk about Tata, because it is real. It is providing you the real value. So how do you know how to create value and how to create valuation? Based on what factors would you be creating the value? So of course, number one, you have to make something that people need, not only want, people need, absolute need, which they don't have, which will save life, which will make life easy, and which will remain to be important even after 100 years to 500 years. That's how your thought process should work. And one of the keys to building such companies that creates a value is because when you create a valuable company, society supports you in the difficult times. Ups and downs are very real. If you make a valuable company, that company survives through generation. Tata company was created before 1900 and it is been driving India since then over a century. That's how valuable companies do. Whereas valuation driven companies, they fall all the time. Alright. So when you create a company, think of the value, and in tomorrow's episode we are going to discuss what are the key components of the value, how to measure value. You can even measure value, but in tomorrow's episode, this is episode number 31, I'm going to teach you how you can measure value, how you can create value. But today I'm leaving you with the thought process, that is it worth to chase a false promise as valuation? Is your life so small to live by a promise? And if you live by a promise, what is the benefit that your future generation and your society gets? Money can collapse. Money can collapse. So even if you have, let's say 10 lakh rupees, if tomorrow rupees collapses and 1000 rupees become $1, then your entire property gets to zero. But if you secure a glass of water every day for your family, it's immense. It never changes. If you dig a pond which can give water to your family for next 10 years, it's real, it's valuable. It's more valuable than the money you leave behind. That's all for today's episode. I hope you'll be able to understand the priority and the importance of creating a valuable company rather than a high valuation company. That's all for today's episode. Thank you so much for making me part of your journey, investing your emotion, energy, intellect in these episodes and making them successful. Please purchase the book 0 to plus minus equal to, which is an e-book. If you are an early stage entrepreneur, you'll get a lot of philosophy, a lot of psychology, a lot of tricks, tips, methods, and processes to build a company. Knowledge is the power. Thank you. Good night. I'll meet you all again tomorrow.